Hello, sleepy minds, and welcome to another relaxing journey with the Sleepy Professor. Before we begin tonight's gentle exploration, I have a little question for you. Where in the world are you watching from? Are you curled up in bed in a snowy village? Or perhaps relaxing somewhere warm near the ocean? Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's imagine. What would happen if the sun quietly disappeared? It begins with nothing. No explosion, no sound, no warning. One moment, the sun is there. Warm, bright, steady. The next, it's simply gone. As if someone flicked off a cosmic switch. But strangely, Earth doesn't notice right away. For about 8 minutes and 20 seconds, everything seems normal. The birds keep singing. The waves keep lapping against the shore. Light continues to pour down from the blue sky. That's because it takes time for light to travel from the sun to us. What we see is not the present, it's the past. So even though the sun has already vanished, we still bask in its final rays. Then, darkness falls. Suddenly, the light goes out, not gradually, like during a sunset, but instantly, like the lights in a room. The blue sky collapses into a blanket of black. Shadows vanish. Warmth begins to flee the air. People around the world look up, confused, alarmed. It's not nighttime. It's the middle of the day, but the sun is no longer there. Some think it's an eclipse, but no shadow of the moon can be seen. Some think it's a global blackout, but the stars have appeared too quickly. And then, the panic begins to rise. Power grids begin to flicker under the strain of a world that suddenly demands light. News anchors speak in hushed tones, unsure of what to say. Scientists rush to telescopes, but they find only void, an empty space where our star once stood. Satellites lose their orientation. Solar panels stop working. All the systems built on sunlight begin to fail. But far more than technology is changing. There's something ancient in the silence now, something primal. In the stillness, humans begin to feel the size of the universe. We are spinning in a vast darkness, alone. No sunrise tomorrow, no morning warmth, just questions. And a strange, creeping sense of awe, mixed with fear. For the first time in human history, the sun has disappeared. When the sun disappears, it doesn't vanish with a bang. Instead, it vanishes with a delay, a cosmic pause. The universe holds its breath. For Earth, this pause lasts exactly 499 seconds. That's how long it takes for light to travel the 93 million miles from the sun to our small, spinning world. In those 8 minutes and 20 seconds, everything remains illuminated. Our shadows still fall behind us. The sky still glows. The warmth still lingers on our skin. The world feels alive. But we're not seeing the present. We're watching the sun's final message, delivered at the speed of light. A farewell we don't yet realize is a farewell. Then, precisely 499 seconds after the sun disappears, the light dies. Not slowly, not like dusk creeping in, but instantly. A universal switch turned off. Darkness arrives at 186,000 miles per second. It's not just visual. The light goes, and so does every form of electromagnetic radiation the sun sends us. Ultraviolet, infrared, radio waves, X-rays, everything. The full spectrum that holds Earth in balance collapses in silence. The solar wind, a steady stream of charged particles that shapes our magnetosphere, also fades. Not instantly, but within days. That invisible shield we take for granted begins to wither, exposing our planet to cosmic rays and distant radiation we were never meant to face. The night sky changes too. At first it looks familiar. Stars twinkle, planets glow faintly. But over time, the difference becomes haunting. There is no moonlight because the moon no longer reflects anything. There are no sunrises on distant worlds. Every planet in our solar system is now cold, dark, and alone. Earth begins to move differently as well. Without the sun's gravity anchoring us, our orbit begins to shift. We were once tethered to the center of the solar system, spinning in a graceful ellipse. Now we drift, floating outward into deep space, leaving the warmth of home behind. The moon, no longer bound by Earth's exact rhythm, begins to wander slightly too. Its tides change, its phases vanish. There is no waxing or waning without sunlight. And yet, to the naked eye, this drifting is invisible. At first, it feels like the same night, just a little darker, just a little quieter. But the silence isn't normal. The darkness isn't natural. It is the absence of presence, the absence of the force that held our world together. This is how the speed of darkness overtakes us, not with violence, but with an eerie stillness, a creeping awareness. Light doesn't leave us in anger. It simply stops arriving. And so the earth keeps turning into a future it can no longer see. The moment the light vanishes, the world becomes quiet, not silent in the ordinary sense. No, this is something deeper. A silence that presses on the chest, a hush that wraps itself around the trees, the buildings, and the mountains. The sounds of life are still there, somewhere, but they seem hesitant, unsure, almost afraid to break the stillness. Without sunlight, the air begins to cool, slowly at first. The warmth that once rose from the ground begins to retreat. Pavement that once radiated heat after a long day now feels like smooth stone in the shade. Leaves no longer turn toward the sky, and the breeze begins to bite ever so gently. It is as if the entire planet holds its breath, waiting for something that will never come. Streetlights flicker on. People open their curtains, peer outside, and for the first time in their lives, they see a world that is not night and not day. It is something in between, something eerie and unfamiliar. The kind of darkness that doesn't belong to the hours of sleep. It belongs to mystery, to endings, to the spaces between worlds. Animals too feel the change. Birds stop their songs mid-note. Dogs whimper at doors. Cats stare out windows with eyes wide and glowing. In forests, wolves raise their noses to the sky, not howling, just listening. Something primal stirs. The rhythms of nature that were built around sunrise and sunset begin to unravel. The great biological clock that guides all living things no longer has a ticking hand. The oceans feel it too. Without the sun's constant pull on water through heat and evaporation, the surface begins to calm. The waves, once fueled by sunlight and wind, begin to lose their energy. Stillness settles over the sea like a great sleep. Even the tides, once drawn by both the moon and the sun, begin to lose their usual rhythm. Human activity slows. The usual bustle of traffic, the hum of cities, the echo of footsteps in busy streets, all begin to fade. Some try to keep moving, to pretend nothing has changed. But others pause. They step outside into the strange twilight and look up, not expecting to see the sun, but out of habit, or hope, or fear. In this new darkness, time feels different. Minutes stretch like hours. Clocks tick normally, but no one trusts them. Without the sun rising and setting, our natural sense of the passage of time begins to dissolve. It becomes difficult to say what part of the day it is. or whether it's a day at all. And still, the Earth turns. The planet continues its spin, as it always has, but now without light to mark its rhythm. A day without sunrise, a night without moonlight. The familiar boundary between hours begins to blur, and all things feel suspended, like a breath held too long. What makes it most unsettling is that there is no storm, no disaster, no sound of destruction, just stillness. Just the quiet realization that something essential is missing, that something we never truly thanked is now gone. The sun didn't scream, it didn't cry. It simply left. And now the world stands in a gentle, haunting silence. As the hours pass, the gentle stillness begins to shift into something more unsettling. The Earth's surface, once bathed in the steady warmth of sunlight, begins to surrender its heat. The change is slow but relentless. What begins as a slight chill in the air becomes a deeper, creeping cold that seems to seep into the bones of the planet itself. Within 24 hours of the sun's disappearance, global surface temperatures begin to drop. The average temperature starts to fall below freezing. Cities that once bustled in comfortable warmth now find themselves wrapped in cold fog, their buildings exhaling faint trails of steam. People wear coats indoors. Heaters are turned on at full blast. Power grids strain as more and more energy is demanded to keep the cold at bay. Yet the cold is winning. With each passing day, the temperature drops further. Within a week, the average surface temperature of Earth plunges to about 17 degrees, 1.4 degrees. Lakes begin to freeze. Rivers slow, then stop. The snow, once a seasonal visitor, now becomes a permanent resident, layering rooftops, forests, and fields with a thickening silence. Nature reacts in shock. Animals that rely on warmth begin migrating, only to find nowhere to go. Birds fly endlessly, disoriented by the lack of a sun to guide them. Bears retreat early into confused hibernation. Insects disappear. Trees stop their cycles. The rhythm of life, so dependent on light and heat, begins to unravel. Oceans, massive thermal batteries, hold their warmth longer than the land, but even they are not immune. Within a few weeks, the surfaces of oceans near the poles begin to freeze. As the cold creeps downward, sea ice expands toward the equator. Coral reefs bleach and die, confused by the darkness and lack of warmth. Entire ecosystems go quiet, like a song stopped mid-note. Human survival becomes increasingly difficult. Most plants die. Agriculture collapses. Stored food becomes precious. People move underground into bunkers, caves, or artificial habitats that try to mimic warmth and light. The wealthy build heated shelters. Governments scramble to build infrastructure to preserve what remains of civilization. But it's not just the cold that haunts humanity, it's the slowness of it. This isn't an explosion or a storm. It's not fire or flood. It's the slow suffocation of warmth, the slow extinguishing of all the rhythms we never noticed until they were gone. There are no sunrises to mark the passage of days, just an endless night, growing colder and colder. Some try to find comfort in firelight, in stories, in music. Communities form around warmth, around shared hope. But deep down, even the most optimistic feel the weight of the future. They know the trend is not stopping. The temperature will keep falling, and the Earth will keep losing the last of its warmth. Within a year, surface temperatures reach 73 degrees, 100 degrees. The oceans begin to freeze to the depths. The land becomes a frozen wasteland. only geothermal energy remains, a faint heat from deep within the planet, like a heartbeat barely heard. And yet, even in this frozen world, humanity still holds on. Some dream of reigniting the sun, others believe it will return. But for now, all they can do is huddle close, listen to the silence, and remember what it was like to feel the sun on their face. Among the first to feel the impact of the sun's disappearance are the plants. Quiet, motionless, yet vital to all life on Earth, they are the silent engines of our biosphere. For billions of years, plants have relied on sunlight to perform the most important chemical reaction in the natural world: photosynthesis. It is through this miraculous process that plants convert sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into oxygen and energy-rich sugars. This energy feeds not only the plants themselves, but every creature that depends on them. Without the sun, this ancient system collapses almost immediately. In the very first hours of darkness, photosynthesis stops. The chloroplasts in every leaf, every blade of grass, every branch of every tree cease their work. The sun no longer rises, so the plants no longer awaken. They sit in the dark, still breathing, still alive, for now, but they are starving. Some plants, like cacti or succulents, can survive for weeks or even months without sunlight, relying on stored energy and water. But most crops, wheat, corn, rice, vegetables, begin to suffer within days. Without photosynthesis, there is no energy, and without energy, growth halts. The tender green shoots that once reached eagerly toward the light begin to droop. Leaves curl inward, flowers fall before they bloom. The vibrant colors of the natural world fade to gray. Oxygen production also begins to decline. Plants not only create food, they create the very air we breathe. In the absence of light, their ability to produce oxygen stops almost entirely. At first, the planet still has enough breathable air, but over time, the balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide begins to shift. Without photosynthesis to absorb CO2, carbon dioxide levels slowly rise. This creates a slow suffocation, one not immediately noticed, but quietly dangerous. Ecosystems feel the collapse early on. Herbivores begin to suffer first. With plants dying, their food sources vanish. Insects disappear. Rabbits, deer, and grazing animals wander across snow-covered fields, finding nothing but cold silence. With the herbivores in decline, predators begin to starve as well. The food web frays and tears in every direction. Forests become graveyards. Meadows fall still. The rhythm of life, once steady and full of energy, is replaced by a creeping stillness. In the oceans, the situation is just as dire. Microscopic phytoplankton, tiny plant-like organisms that float near the surface, are responsible for more than half of Earth's oxygen production. They too rely on sunlight. Without it, their numbers plummet. The base of the marine food chain collapses. Fish, whales, seals, birds, all begin to feel the consequences of this invisible catastrophe. Coral reefs, already stressed from temperature changes, go dark. They lose their color, their life, and eventually their structure. The oceans, once teeming with activity, become quiet, cold, and barren. Humans too feel the absence of plant life almost immediately. Without crops, agriculture collapses. Without forests, building materials, medicine sources, and ecosystem stability disappear. The green world, once taken for granted, begins to vanish before our eyes. Cities grow grey, rural areas empty, air becomes harder to breathe, food scarcer, life more desperate. In ancient myths, The sun was often seen as a god, a bringer of life. Now, in its absence, we understand why. The plants, the quiet worshippers of that ancient god, can no longer sing their song. Their silence spreads, echoing through every forest, every field, every corner of the earth. Without the sun, the earth becomes not just cold, but empty. Not just dark, but voiceless. As the light disappears and the world begins to freeze, animals too awaken to a reality they cannot understand. Their lives have always revolved around the sun. It told them when to wake, when to sleep, when to hunt, migrate, or mate. Its rising and setting formed the backbone of every biological rhythm. Without it, the animal kingdom is thrown into chaos. At first, the confusion is subtle. Diurnal animals, those who are active during the day, hesitate to emerge from their shelters. Birds delay their songs. Squirrels do not come out to forage. Insects that should buzz through morning air remain still beneath leaves. The world that once came alive at dawn now remains suspended in a twilight that never ends. Nocturnal animals are equally disoriented. Their activity is tied not only to the absence of light, but to the patterns of nightfall and dawn. When night never ends, even their internal clocks begin to fail. Owls fly aimlessly. Bats leave their roosts too early or too late. Creatures of the night wander a world that no longer follows any rhythm. The first few days bring hesitation, but as temperatures drop and plants begin to die, hesitation turns to desperation. Food becomes scarce. Herbivores have nothing to graze on. Predators follow their prey into barren fields and frozen forests, only to find emptiness. Hunger spreads quickly. In the forests, deer and rabbits begin migrating in unfamiliar directions. They search for warmth, for vegetation, for any sign of the world they once knew, but nothing comes. Snow deepens. The cold thickens. Many collapse in the fields, their bodies succumbing to exposure and starvation. Predators grow weaker. Wolves, lions, and foxes lose their sharp edge. Without prey, their packs and families begin to dwindle. The natural hierarchy breaks down. Desperate animals that would never meet in ordinary circumstances now cross paths, scavenging, fighting, surviving. Territories blur. The strong become weak, and the weak vanish entirely. In the sky, birds take flight, hoping instinct will guide them to a better place. But there is no direction anymore, no sun to guide them, no thermals to lift them. Migratory paths dissolve, flocks scatter or fall from the sky, exhausted and confused. In the oceans, marine animals also struggle. Without sunlight, the layers of the ocean begin to cool. Surface-feeding species, like dolphins and whales, lose access to the small fish and plankton that once gathered near the warm, sunlit surface. As the cold deepens, entire species migrate downward or drift into unfamiliar territories, seeking warmth that no longer exists. Some perish in the journey, others settle in eerie, cold silence. Even animals in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean who have never known sunlight are affected. The ecosystems that supported them rely on nutrients brought down from the sunlit world above. Now, those nutrients are gone. The chain is broken. Insects, vital to nearly every ecosystem, disappear quickly. Bees, butterflies, ants, beetles, all vanish without flowers to pollinate, without warmth to move. Their sudden absence throws ecosystems further out of balance. Pollination stops. Seeds go undispersed. The chain of life frays further. Zoos and wildlife sanctuaries around the world face unbearable challenges. Animals in captivity struggle to adapt. Some are kept alive through artificial light and heat, but many cannot adjust to the unnatural conditions. Veterinarians and caretakers work tirelessly, often in vain, to keep their animals fed, warm, and calm in a world that no longer makes sense. In time, the sounds of nature begin to fade. Forests, once alive with song and movement, fall silent. Rivers no longer ripple with fish. The wind carries only the moan of empty branches. The once vast, vibrant kingdom of animals becomes a memory, something spoken of in stories, not seen in life. And yet, there are a few that hold on. A handful of species, small, hidden, resilient, find ways to burrow, to adapt, to sleep. They become ghosts in the frozen earth, waiting for something that may never return. In their stillness, in their refusal to surrender, they carry the last heartbeat of the animal world. As the sun vanishes from the sky, the moon and stars begin to take center stage. In the absence of sunlight, the heavens grow more visible than they have been in millennia, with no solar glare to drown them out. Even the faintest stars become crisp, shimmering points in a sky so dark it seems endless. Constellations once lost to city lights stretch from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way, often faint or invisible, now arcs brilliantly overhead, a river of light flowing through infinite darkness. At first, this celestial display is breathtaking. People step outside and stare upward, mesmerized. For those who have lived their lives beneath hazy skies or artificial lighting, the sudden brilliance of the universe is overwhelming. There is beauty in this darkness, strange, cold, and perfect. Cameras come out. Telescopes are pointed upward. Children ask questions their parents can't answer. But it doesn't take long for that awe to give way to unease. Because while the stars still shine, the moon does not. The moon, once so familiar in its cycles, waxing and waning, brightening and fading, is now a black disk. It reflects nothing. It hangs silently in the sky, like a ghost of its former self. It no longer glows because it has no light to borrow. Once a symbol of romance, mystery, and guidance, it becomes instead a reminder of the sun's absence, a mirror that no longer shows anything at all. The tides shift subtly at first. With the sun gone, only the moon's gravity influences Earth's oceans. Tidal patterns change. Coastal ecosystems begin to struggle. Creatures that rely on rhythmic tides to spawn or feed lose their cues. Crabs, fish, and shorebirds move aimlessly. Beaches grow silent. The moon remains above them, but it has lost its influence. It is present, yet powerless. Over time, this loss begins to impact human life as well. For thousands of years, humans tracked time by the sky. They followed the moon's phases, the path of constellations, the dance of planets. Farmers planted by lunar light, sailors navigated by the stars, calendars, rituals, harvests, all linked to the heavens. Now those patterns are broken. The constellations still move, but their meaning fades. The stars remain, but they offer no warmth, no change, no hope of morning. Looking up becomes an act of remembering rather than discovering. People begin to avoid the night sky, as though it reminds them of something painful. It has become too sharp, too honest. Without the sun to balance it, the sky is a wound that never heals. Even the northern and southern lights begin to fade. Without the solar wind, charged particles from the sun that create those dazzling curtains of color, auroras vanish. The poles grow darker. The earth grows quieter. In the absence of sunlight, the heavens become a monument, not a celebration, but a gravestone. a vast, cold cathedral filled with ancient light, beautiful and indifferent. The stars shine not for us, but in spite of us. They do not know we are watching, and that, perhaps, is the hardest truth. The night sky no longer promises anything. It no longer tells us a story. It simply exists, endless and silent, above a planet that is growing colder, quieter, and increasingly forgotten. In the first few hours after the sun disappears, human society reacts with confusion, but not panic. After all, we've seen eclipses, we've experienced blackouts, long nights, and strange weather events. People assume it's temporary, maybe a global eclipse, a cosmic event, or something scientific they don't yet understand. There's speculation on news channels. Scientists are interviewed. Governments issue calm statements urging people to stay indoors and await further information. But as the hours stretch into a full day and no sunrise comes, something begins to shift. People turn on every light in their homes, trying to push back against the unnatural darkness. Streets that would normally be bathed in morning light glow only with artificial lamps. Cars move slowly, headlights cutting through the endless night. Schools close, offices shut down, flights are grounded. Life begins to pause. By the second day, the world is fully illuminated by electricity. Cities become islands of light in a sea of black. The demand for power skyrockets. Heaters, lamps, screens, ovens, all are turned on at once. The electrical grid groans under the weight of an entire planet trying to mimic daylight. In colder regions, people crowd into community centers or shelters. Heating becomes essential. Without it, homes turn into refrigerators. Engineers and technicians work around the clock to keep the lights on. Coal plants burn faster. Gas is pumped in higher quantities. Nuclear reactors push to their limits. Solar panels are useless now. Wind farms begin to falter as wind patterns shift. Hydroelectric dams offer some relief, but even they begin to suffer from changes in water flow as rivers freeze and snow builds. The world's energy infrastructure was never built for permanent night. Internet forums, news broadcasts, and social media explode with questions. Is this the end? Did we do something wrong? Is it a solar event? A divine punishment? Conspiracies spread as fear begins to outweigh reason. Some people turn to religion, others to science, and some simply to each other. Communities gather around fire pits and generators. The flickering of artificial light becomes the new hearth. People share food, blankets, and silence. But with the increase in power, usage comes fragility. Blackouts begin, first in rural areas, then in entire cities. Lights flicker, heaters fail, panic spreads. People hoard candles, batteries, fuel. Prices rise, tensions grow, crime increases in the shadows. Some areas are abandoned. People flee to warmer climates, if such places still exist. But everywhere, the darkness waits. Governments declare states of emergency. Curfews are implemented. Military trucks distribute supplies. But the longer the darkness lasts, the harder it becomes to maintain order. Civil unrest grows. Protests turn to riots in places. In others, silence reigns, not out of peace, but from resignation. The world begins to adapt, but it is adapting to a nightmare. In time, entire cities move underground. Subways are converted into living spaces. Old mines, basements, and tunnels become homes. People try to rebuild in artificial environments where light and heat can be controlled. LED lamps replace the sun. UV lights simulate growth for hydroponic farms. Technology offers some hope, but it is limited and costly. Not everyone has access. Inequality deepens. The wealthy retreat into climate-controlled bunkers. The poor fight for survival. Nations turn inward. Borders tighten. International cooperation, once vital for space exploration and scientific progress, begins to fade. Countries hoard energy, supplies, and knowledge. The global human family fractures into isolated, fearful camps. And yet, in some places, there is resilience. Small communities form new routines. Artists paint with battery-powered light. Musicians play in candlelit halls. Teachers hold classes in underground rooms. Children laugh beneath fake skylights painted with clouds. Human creativity refuses to die. It adapts, even in the dark. But no matter how much light we generate, it can never replace the sun. Artificial light is a flicker, a placeholder, a symbol of resistance, yes, but also of loss. Humanity survives, but it is forever changed. We begin to wonder not only how we can bring the sun back, but what we are without it. Even as the earth plunges into darkness and cold, it continues to spin, steadily, silently, as it has for billions of years. The planet does not stop. The laws of motion, of gravity, of inertia carry on unchanged. But the experience of time begins to fracture. Without sunlight, there are no more sunrises or sunsets to mark the passing of a day. The comforting rhythm that has governed life on Earth since its beginning, morning, afternoon, evening, night, is erased. In its place is a perpetual twilight of artificial lighting. Digital clocks keep ticking. Phones still tell us what hour it is, but no one feels it anymore. Time becomes a number, not a sensation. People begin to lose their internal sense of day and night. Circadian rhythms, the natural cycles wired into our biology, start to collapse. Without the sun's daily cues, our bodies struggle to regulate sleep, hunger, hormones, and emotions. Some sleep too much, others not at all. Mental health declines, depression spreads, anxiety becomes common, as if the darkness were seeping into the human spirit itself. In an attempt to restore order, communities set schedules based on what they remember. Wake at 7, sleep at 10. Lamps are programmed to mimic morning light and dim gradually in the evening. Schools and workplaces adopt artificial daylight hours. But it's not the same. The light feels wrong. The body knows it's not real. Deep inside, something primitive keeps waiting for a dawn that will never arrive. Religious groups respond in various ways. Some hold sunrise services in complete darkness, reciting prayers for a sun they believe will return. Others turn inward, interpreting the endless night as a test, a judgment, or a sign of apocalypse. Festivals that once honored light, solstice celebrations, harvest festivals, dawn rituals, are now held beneath LED stars and battery-powered bonfires. Faith becomes both a source of comfort and sorrow, a bridge between memory and uncertainty. Scientists try to measure the Earth's rotation by other means. Instruments still show the planet turning at the same rate, one full spin every 24 hours. But for the first time, that number has no meaning for ordinary people. A day is no longer something you feel. It is something you calculate. It is marked by machines, not by light. For children born into this new world, the concept of a sunrise becomes mythical, like dragons or gods, something imagined, not experienced. Even animals suffer this disconnection from time. Birds no longer rise with the light. Roosters don't crow. Nocturnal creatures no longer hide before dawn. Everything blends into a kind of timelessness, and endless now. In places where artificial light is scarce, the effect is more profound. Villages, isolated outposts, refugee camps. These places live in near complete darkness, with only firelight or occasional batteries to guide them. People in these regions begin to lose track of time entirely. Days bleed into nights. Conversations begin with questions like, "What day is it?" or "Have I slept yet?" Artists and philosophers try to capture this new relationship with time. Some describe it as freedom, a release from the tyranny of the clock. Others see it as a descent into confusion, a world unmoored from rhythm and reason. Paintings grow darker. Music becomes slower, more haunting. Literature reflects a world without punctuation, a story with no chapter breaks, no sunrise to divide scenes. And yet, somewhere beneath it all, the earth keeps turning. Its spin does not depend on light. The stars, though distant and cold, still swirl above. Gravity still pulls. Time still flows. But without the sun, we no longer feel it in our bones. The pulse of the earth continues, but humanity has lost its heartbeat. Deep beneath the oceans, in the vast and ancient darkness of the deep sea, something begins to change. The oceans, which had once pulsed with movement and life, slowly begin to fall still. The disappearance of the sun sets into motion a quiet unraveling of the planet's largest and most mysterious biome. At first, the ocean appears to be the last refuge of stability. Unlike the land, which rapidly loses heat, the oceans hold warmth for longer. Water, with its high heat capacity, resists temperature change. In the first weeks, the surface begins to cool, but the deep sea remains largely untouched, its cold, pressurized silence unchanged. But this is temporary. Without the sun, the surface waters begin to freeze. In polar regions, ice spreads more quickly than ever before, crawling southward and northward toward the equator. At first, it is a thin sheet. Then it grows thicker, harder, heavier. Eventually, entire swaths of the ocean are sealed beneath miles of ice. The once blue world becomes white, and what was fluid becomes fixed. The freezing surface traps heat beneath, but also seals life in. Sunlight no longer penetrates the top layers. Photosynthetic plankton, the invisible architects of the ocean's food web, die off quickly. With them go the small fish that eat them. With those fish go the larger predators that depend on them. A cascade begins, silent and irreversible. Marine animals try to adapt. Some migrate deeper into the abyssal plains, seeking more stable temperatures. Others cluster near hydrothermal vents, cracks in the Earth's crust where heat and minerals pour into the ocean from deep within the planet. These vents become sanctuaries of warmth and nutrients in an otherwise lifeless ocean. Around them, colonies of tube worms, crustaceans, and strange, glowing fish begin to gather in greater numbers. But these vents are rare and fragile. They cannot support the entire weight of oceanic life. Their ecosystems, while resilient, are localized. The great migrations of whales, the swirling shoals of fish, the coral reefs that once painted the ocean floor in color, all fade into stillness. Reefs bleach and crumble, ocean currents slow and then falter. The great conveyor belt of Earth's thermohaline circulation, the global system that moves heat and nutrients through the oceans, begins to collapse. As the oceans cool, their chemistry shifts. Gases dissolve differently in colder water. Oxygen levels drop in deeper waters, creating hypoxic zones, dead zones, where even the most resilient marine creatures cannot survive. Acidification worsens as carbon dioxide accumulates in the atmosphere and then dissolves into the oceans. Shell-forming creatures, clams, snails, corals, struggle to survive in this new, corrosive environment. The silence spreads. Sonar equipment aboard abandoned research vessels records fewer and fewer sounds. Whale songs disappear. The clicks of dolphins go quiet. The chattering coral reefs fall mute. What was once an underwater symphony becomes a realm of echoes. Human activity in the oceans ceases almost entirely. Fishing fleets are grounded, ports frozen solid. Underwater research stations are abandoned. Submarines and deep-sea drones lie dormant. The ocean becomes not just unreachable, but unknowable. And yet, in pockets, life endures. In the darkest trenches near the Earth's crust, microbial life continues to cling to existence. Extremophiles, organisms that thrive in heat, pressure, and toxic conditions, live on. They are remnants of a time before sunlight ever reached Earth. And in their quiet persistence, they remind us of how life began, not with light, but with heat. Some scientists believe that, given enough time, life could adapt again. That ecosystems might reform around geothermal sources. That in the blackest parts of the sea, evolution may slowly reshape the survivors into something new. But it would take eons. And for now, the ocean sleeps. It is a sleep filled not with dreams, but with memory. The memory of light filtering down through waves. The memory of whales gliding through sunlit currents. The memory of coral forests and the heartbeat of tides. The memory of a world that once danced in rhythm with the sun. Now, beneath miles of ice and silence, the ocean holds its breath. As the Earth's surface grows colder and the skies remain dark, human societies undergo a transformation that is as profound as it is desperate. With agriculture failing and natural ecosystems collapsing, the old structures of civilization begin to falter. Cities, once centers of progress and connection, become cold tombs of glass and concrete. Streets, once filled with light and laughter, are now quiet, buried in snow and shadow. People flee these places in waves, seeking any remaining source of warmth, light, or food. The global economy disintegrates. Currencies lose meaning. Stock markets are irrelevant. What has value now is simple and elemental. Heat, shelter, clean water, food, medicine, fire. Power grids, already weakened by the loss of solar input and strained supply chains, begin to fail one by one. Satellites, designed to function in sunlit orbits, fall silent as solar panels fail to recharge them. The world becomes both smaller and lonelier. Nations no longer trade, they hoard. Borders close. Communication becomes sporadic. Internet signals falter. Radio becomes the primary medium of connection once again, crackling with faint voices in the dark. A global civilization recedes into scattered enclaves, pockets of light in a sea of cold and silence. Some of these enclaves are underground, shelters built decades ago, now reactivated. Old Cold War bunkers, research stations, experimental deep earth facilities. Others are beneath mountains or hidden in old mines, where geothermal heat still offers a chance at survival. In these hidden cities, people ration food, recycle every drop of water, and live by artificial clocks and artificial suns. Daily life becomes centered around survival. Everything is counted: calories, power usage, air quality, psychological stress. Work is redistributed toward maintenance of the shelter and the morale of its people. Children are raised not with dreams of open skies or sunny fields, but with diagrams of hydroponic farms and emergency protocols. Culture does not vanish, but it shrinks. Art becomes introspective. Stories are whispered in corners. Songs are hummed in hushed tones, often about a son no one remembers but all long for. Leadership takes on a new role, not one of conquest or growth, but of endurance. Communities appoint stewards rather than rulers. Power is drawn not from wealth or inheritance, but from wisdom, emotional strength, and technical skill. People begin to value traits that civilization once overlooked: calm under pressure, quiet optimism, collaboration, patience. Religion, too, changes. Some sects grow fanatical, interpreting the eternal night as divine punishment. Others become deeply mystical, finding meaning in the struggle, preaching that even in darkness, light exists within. Prayer becomes less about salvation and more about survival, a shared act that brings people together in silence and gratitude. And science continues, haltingly, stubbornly, bravely. In some enclaves, researchers attempt to develop new forms of energy. Experiments with geothermal and nuclear fusion continue, sometimes with breakthroughs, often with failure. Some look to the stars, seeking energy sources in orbit or ways to escape the Earth entirely. Others look inward, into biology and psychology, trying to engineer resilience into the human body and spirit. But above all, there is memory. Memory becomes a form of power. Those who remember the sun describe it to children with aching detail: how it warmed your face, how shadows danced on sidewalks, how flowers turned their heads to follow it. Libraries, museums, hard drives, and oral traditions are treated like treasures, maps of a world that used to be and might one day return. Society does not die. It adapts. It becomes quieter, more communal, more careful. It becomes a civilization of warmth seekers, of whisperers, of keepers of flame. And even in the deepest bunkers, someone still wakes early, lights a small artificial lamp, and whispers, "Good morning," though the morning no longer comes. Without the sun, Earth's atmosphere undergoes a transformation as dramatic as any science fiction scenario ever imagined. The sun is not just a provider of light and warmth. It's a constant source of energy that maintains the delicate balance of air currents, weather systems, and atmospheric chemistry. In its absence, that balance collapses. What follows is not just a colder world, but a world where the very air begins to turn against life. The first major change is the cessation of global wind patterns. Normally, the sun heats different parts of the Earth unevenly, creating pressure differences that drive the movement of air. Warm air rises at the equator, cools at the poles, and sets vast wind systems into motion. But now, with no heat input, this great engine shuts down. The once powerful jet streams falter. Trade winds disappear. The skies grow still. Without wind, weather systems stall. Storms that once moved across continents now hover in place. Cold, slow-moving spirals of snow and ice. Rain becomes rare. Precipitation patterns break down. Without the sun's heat to drive evaporation, clouds form less frequently. The hydrological cycle, the continuous movement of water through evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, grinds to a halt. Temperatures plummet further. The lack of atmospheric circulation means that there's nothing to redistribute what little heat remains. Cold air pools in valleys, in cities, in every low place. The air grows heavier. In some places, fog becomes permanent, a thick, unmoving curtain of ice crystals suspended in stillness. Atmospheric pressure shifts. As the air cools and contracts, it sinks. This leads to widespread areas of high pressure, where the air is so dense that even breathing feels different. Oxygen levels remain unchanged in composition, but the sensation of each breath becomes heavier, slower. Some people, especially the elderly, or those with respiratory conditions, begin to struggle in this denser, colder atmosphere. And then there is the silence. Without wind rustling through trees, without birds or insects, the world above ground becomes eerily quiet. No breeze to carry sound, no distant thunder. The earth enters a state of suspended stillness, a hush that seems almost sacred and yet utterly alien. The composition of the atmosphere also begins to shift. While humans and machines still produce carbon dioxide through respiration and combustion, there are no longer plants to absorb it through photosynthesis. Forests have frozen, grasslands are barren, oceans no longer support phytoplankton. Over time, carbon dioxide begins to build. Slowly, the air becomes heavier with a gas that no longer serves a purpose. And while it may not accumulate fast enough to suffocate, it marks the slow decay of the Earth's life support systems. Pollutants that once broke down in sunlight now linger. Without UV radiation to degrade smog, chemical particles remain suspended in the air for longer than before. In underground shelters, air filtration becomes one of the most vital technologies. Above ground, the air turns stale, unmoving, and strangely lifeless. Auroras still dance at the poles for a time, ghostly remnants of solar winds past. But without the sun's constant barrage of charged particles, even these disappear. The skies, once a canvas of motion and color, become static and grey, an eternal dusk. The ionosphere weakens. Satellite communication deteriorates. The magnetic field remains, but without the solar wind to shape it, it shrinks inward. The Earth's protective bubble grows thinner. And in this new, airless feeling world, humans adapt. They build insulated domes, sealed environments with controlled atmospheres. They monitor air quality constantly. Some try to simulate the wind, using large ventilation systems to circulate air and create a sense of movement. Anything to remind people that the air is still there, still alive. But nothing can truly replicate the feeling of a warm breeze brushing your face on a spring morning. That simple sensation, once taken for granted, becomes a legend. And so, in the stories told in underground enclaves, children close their eyes as their parents describe the invisible dance of air through leaves, the way it made flags flutter and wind chimes sing. The wind, once unnoticed, becomes sacred, a memory of a living world. Without the sun to drive the engine of life, the natural world descends into a silent collapse. Life on Earth has always been deeply intertwined with sunlight, from the smallest blade of grass to the largest blue whale, from ancient ferns to flowering trees. Everything depends, directly or indirectly, on the golden energy that pours down from the sky. In the absence of that light, ecosystems begin to unravel. The great web of life frays strand by strand. Photosynthesis ceases almost immediately. Plants, unable to convert sunlight into energy, fall into metabolic shutdown. At first, some hardy species try to survive using stored sugars, but within days, their energy reserves deplete. Leaves wither. Forests, once green and alive with sound, become vast fields of brittle brown husks. Flowers do not bloom. Crops planted in anticipation of a harvest never sprout. Grasslands dry into silence. With plants gone, the herbivores suffer next. Grazers like deer, rabbits, and elephants wander aimlessly at first, then starve. Insects vanish. Bees no longer visit flowers that no longer exist. Pollinators, once so vital to the cycle of growth, have nothing left to pollinate. And the predators, too, soon face the same fate. Without prey, they grow weaker, hungrier, more desperate, until finally they too begin to disappear. the oceans are not spared. Phytoplankton, the microscopic plants of the sea and the foundation of marine life, die off rapidly. Coral reefs bleach and break apart. The vibrant underwater ecosystems become ghost towns. Fish populations plummet. Whales, seals, and dolphins find less and less to eat. Eventually, the deep sea, long sustained by the organic rain from above, goes quiet. The ocean becomes a vast, dark desert. Some life forms endure longer than others. Fungi, which thrive on decay, begin to flourish briefly in the forests of the dead. Bacteria and extremophiles, those creatures that live near volcanic vents or deep underground, persist, untouched by the sun's disappearance. But these are fragments, echoes of life rather than life as we once knew it. The skies are no longer alive with birds. Migration ceases. Nests are abandoned. Songs stop. The chorus of dawn, the rise of sound that once greeted every sunrise, vanishes. No more cicadas buzzing in the heat of the day. No frogs calling in the night. Silence takes the place of the orchestra of life. Some humans attempt to save what they can. Genetic banks preserve seeds and DNA samples. Cryogenic facilities store frozen embryos of endangered species. A few scientists work in underground biodomes, trying to simulate ecosystems with artificial light. But most of these attempts are desperate and limited in scope. Nature, once effortless in its abundance, now requires human machines and calculations just to survive. Emotionally, the absence of life begins to weigh on the human spirit. People speak of green hunger, a deep longing not just for food, but for the color of leaves, the smell of rain on soil, the sound of rustling branches. Children born after the sun's disappearance grow up without ever seeing a tree, a bird, or a living flower. To them, nature becomes mythology, stories told by elders who remember a time when the world breathed. Art tries to keep the memory alive. Painters recreate landscapes from memory. Writers describe sunlit fields, thunderclouds, buzzing meadows. Musicians compose melodies inspired by bird calls or ocean waves. But these are echoes, not replacements. They speak to what was lost, not what remains. And yet, in this extinction of the visible world, there is still a strange reverence. In quiet moments, people reflect not only on what they had, but on how connected it all once was. They begin to see that life wasn't just about survival. It was about relationship. The bee to the flower, the tree to the soil, the predator to the prey, the sun to all. In remembering what has passed, humanity begins to ask deeper questions. What was our place in that tapestry? Did we live as part of nature or as its master? Could we have done things differently? These questions do not bring back the forests, the oceans, the songs, but they echo in the silence, shaping the stories we now tell about the earth, not just as a place we lived, but as a living being we once knew and deeply miss. In the absence of the sun, the ocean's vast currents begin to falter, and the great conveyor belt of water circulation, a system that has regulated Earth's climate for millions of years, slows to a near halt. This system, driven by differences in water temperature and salinity, carries warm water from the tropics toward the poles and cold water back toward the equator. It redistributes heat, balances weather patterns, and sustains marine life. But without the sun's warmth, the entire cycle is disrupted. Initially, the surface waters cool rapidly. As the temperature drops, sea ice forms, expanding across the polar regions and moving inexorably toward lower latitudes. This ice cap thickens, reflecting more sunlight away from the Earth, accelerating the cooling process, a feedback loop of ice and cold that grips the planet in an ever-tightening grip. With the cooling ocean surface, the sinking of dense, cold water, a key driver of the deep ocean currents, weakens. This causes a breakdown of the thermohaline circulation, the so-called global ocean conveyor belt. The deep ocean becomes more stagnant. Nutrient cycling slows dramatically. The rich upwelling of nutrients that supports fish populations dwindles. Marine ecosystems suffer as a result. The collapse of nutrient flows starves phytoplankton, the microscopic plants that form the foundation of marine food webs. With fewer phytoplankton, fish populations plummet. Predators from small seabirds to giant whales find their food sources vanishing. Coral reefs bleach and die. The vibrant, diverse underwater cities, once teeming with life, become ghostly wastelands. The ocean's chemical balance shifts. Oxygen levels drop in the deeper layers, creating dead zones where most marine life cannot survive. Acidification worsens as excess carbon dioxide accumulates. Shell-forming organisms struggle to maintain their calcium carbonate structures, leading to further collapse of marine biodiversity. Surface currents slow, changing weather patterns worldwide. Regions once known for temperate climates grow colder and more volatile. The slowing of the Gulf Stream and similar currents threatens to freeze parts of Europe and North America. Monsoon patterns in Asia become unpredictable. Droughts and floods increase in intensity and frequency. The ocean's decline also impacts human societies. Coastal communities lose fisheries that once provided food and livelihood. Ports become frozen or inaccessible. Maritime trade grinds to a halt. Economies dependent on the sea face collapse. Despite this, some pockets of marine life endure. Near hydrothermal vents, underwater geysers fueled by geothermal energy, unique ecosystems continue. Extremophiles thrive, organisms adapted to heat, pressure, and darkness. These vents become islands of survival in a dying ocean. Humans respond with desperate innovation. Efforts to farm the sea shift toward closed systems, aquaculture in controlled environments. Scientists attempt to artificially stimulate nutrient cycling with deep-sea pumps. Geoengineering ideas emerge, aiming to revive ocean circulation or even create artificial light sources underwater. Yet, these are small-scale solutions, insufficient to restore the vast oceanic systems that once governed the planet. The ocean's heartbeat slows, echoing a silent lament beneath miles of ice and shadow. As the sun vanishes, the rhythm of the seasons itself begins to fade away. Earth's tilt on its axis, which causes the familiar cycle of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, still persists. But without the sun's warmth to mark these changes, the seasons become hollow and indistinct. The natural cues that once guided life's cycles, the blooming of flowers, the migration of birds, the shedding of leaves, grow fainter and more erratic. In the early days, some plants and animals attempt to follow the seasonal patterns they have evolved with for millions of years. Trees bud and bloom in what would have been spring, but without sunlight, the energy for photosynthesis is missing. Flowers open, but soon wilt. Migratory birds set out on journeys with no hope of finding warmer climates. Animals that hibernate struggle as their internal clocks conflict with the unchanging darkness. As months turn to years, the seasons blur into a continuous cold and shadow. The forests that once turned brilliant shades of red and gold no longer change color. The frost lingers longer each year, spreading across continents and never fully retreating. Snow accumulates endlessly. The world becomes trapped in a single, endless winter. Agriculture collapses. Farmers cannot rely on the familiar seasonal cycles to plant and harvest. Crops fail repeatedly. Food shortages become chronic. Communities struggle to store and ration dwindling supplies. The once celebrated festivals tied to seasons, harvest festivals, Spring celebrations become distant memories, relics of a warmer world. Human psychology is deeply affected by this loss. The changing seasons have long shaped human emotions, rituals, and social patterns. The arrival of spring brings hope and renewal. Summer holds energy and growth. Autumn offers reflection and preparation. Winter demands endurance and rest. With the seasons muted, people lose this natural emotional rhythm. Days feel monotonous and unchanging. The passage of time becomes abstract and difficult to grasp. In response, humans create artificial substitutes. They simulate seasons indoors, changing light intensity and color to mimic spring or autumn. Communities organize festivals to mark imagined seasonal transitions, striving to preserve cultural continuity. Schools teach about seasons as historical concepts, a natural heritage now lost. Yet, no artificial simulation can fully restore the complex interplay of sunlight, temperature, life, and emotion that the true seasons provided. The loss reverberates across all aspects of life, from agriculture to art, from biology to folklore. Animals are deeply confused. Migratory species falter. Birds and butterflies get lost in ceaseless flight. Mammals struggle to adjust reproductive cycles. Insects that depend on temperature cues cease normal development. Some species face extinction simply because the calendar they evolved with no longer matches the world they live in. The oceans too feel this loss. Seasonal upwellings slow or stop. Fish breeding cycles disrupt. Coral reefs lose the rhythm of spawning events, weakening their recovery. The delicate dance of marine life, timed to the seasons, unravels. Despite this, life clings on, adapting as best it can. Some plants and animals shift their behavior. Some fish migrate differently. Some birds change routes. Humans, with their creativity and resilience, search for meaning in the darkened world. They learn new ways to mark time. They invent calendars based on stars, phases of the moon, or human events. They find new rhythms in community gatherings, work, and rest. In this way, even as the true seasons vanish, humanity strives to create its own cycles, its own meaning in the endless night. But the absence of the sun's guiding warmth remains a profound wound, a silent echo that shapes the new world forever. The disappearance of the sun initiates a profound shift in Earth's climate systems, one that cascades through every living thing and every corner of the planet. The atmosphere cools rapidly, and with it, the delicate balance of heat and moisture that sustains weather patterns begins to unravel. Without the sun's energy to fuel evaporation, clouds thin and rainfall becomes sparse. Rivers and lakes start to freeze over, and the hydrological cycle slows to a crawl. As temperatures drop, the polar ice caps expand aggressively, pushing ice sheets farther from the poles toward the equator. This increased albedo effect, where ice reflects sunlight, compounds the cooling, creating a feedback loop that plunges the planet into an ever-deepening freeze. Permafrost spreads into regions that once hosted rich forests and thriving ecosystems. These frozen soils lock away organic carbon, changing the chemistry of the atmosphere and further disturbing the climate balance. In many regions, rainfall diminishes drastically. Deserts grow larger and drier. Forests suffer from drought stress, compounding the effects of cold and darkness. Plants that survive the initial absence of sunlight struggle with lack of water. Without precipitation to replenish groundwater and soil moisture, crops fail and natural vegetation thins. This stresses herbivores and the animals that depend on them, accelerating the collapse of food chains. Wind patterns falter as well. The sun's uneven heating is what drives global winds and jet streams. So without it, air currents weaken and become irregular. This stagnation contributes to localized weather extremes, cold spells, prolonged droughts, and sudden violent storms, triggered by residual energy imbalances. With less wind, the natural dispersal of seeds and pollen is hindered, further affecting plant reproduction and biodiversity. Human populations face growing challenges. Flooding decreases in some regions, but is replaced by drought and water scarcity in others. Freshwater sources dwindle or freeze, causing conflicts over remaining supplies. Agricultural zones shift, and many areas that once grew staple crops become unsuitable for farming. Migration increases as people seek more hospitable environments, often leading to overcrowding and resource competition in those areas. Infrastructure too suffers. Roads and buildings are battered by freeze-thaw cycles. Water pipes freeze and burst. Power lines are strained by increased heating demands and harsh weather. Transportation is disrupted by snow and ice. Economic systems falter under these stresses, and governments struggle to maintain order and provide services. In response, human societies adapt with technology and innovation. Irrigation systems become vital for agriculture, recycling and rationing water with precision. Greenhouses and indoor farming attempt to compensate for lost natural cycles. Desalination plants and water purification become lifelines. Weather forecasting grows more complex as new patterns emerge unpredictably. Culturally, the environment's stark new reality changes human perceptions and relationships with nature. Once abundant and welcoming landscapes become harsh and unforgiving. The loss of reliable seasons and predictable weather leads to a collective sense of vulnerability and grief. Stories, art, and rituals evolve to reflect survival in this changed world, celebrating resilience, adaptation, and the hope of eventual renewal. Despite these challenges, life persists. Some species find refuge in microclimates or geothermal hotspots. Certain plants adapt to colder, drier conditions, evolving hardier forms. Animals alter migratory routes and breeding habits. Humans, resilient and resourceful, rebuild communities with a deeper respect for the fragile balance of their environment. In this new era of climate transformation, Earth's atmosphere is both a battleground and a lifeline. Its delicate systems the threads that connect all life. The disappearance of the sun has reshaped these threads, testing humanity's ingenuity and endurance. Yet, within the frozen silence, the breath of the planet still lingers, a quiet reminder that even in darkness, life's pulse can endure. With the sun gone, the energy that drives life's cycles on Earth is no longer present, but there remains a subtle, persistent pulse beneath the surface, the slow, steady rotation of the planet itself. Earth continues to spin on its axis, completing a full rotation approximately every 24 hours. This fundamental movement, inherited from the planet's formation billions of years ago, persists even in the absence of sunlight, and it shapes the rhythms of night and day, temperature changes, and atmospheric phenomena. However, without the sun's illumination, the concept of day and night loses its familiar meaning. The cycle of light and dark that has regulated life's activities, from feeding to sleeping, becomes a shadow of what it once was. Instead of bright days and dark nights, the planet is enveloped in an unchanging twilight, broken only by the artificial lights humans create, or the faint glow of stars and distant galaxies. The rotation, though constant, no longer offers warmth or energy. Temperatures remain frigid regardless of the hour. The subtle shifts in temperature and light that once accompanied dawn and dusk vanish, replaced by cold and darkness that envelop the entire planet. The psychological impact on living creatures is profound. Humans, animals, and plants that relied on these cues to regulate their internal clocks face confusion, disorientation, and disruption of vital processes. Biologically, many species possess circadian rhythms, internal clocks that sync with the cycle of day and night. Without light to signal time's passage, these rhythms break down. Sleep cycles become erratic. Hormonal balances shift unpredictably. Reproductive behaviors tied to specific times of day or seasons falter. Over time, this leads to widespread stress and declines in health and reproduction rates. Humans respond by creating artificial cycles to mimic the lost natural rhythm. Lights are programmed to simulate sunrise and sunset. Clocks and calendars attempt to impose order on a world where natural cues no longer function. But no machine or schedule can fully replace the ancient connection to the sun's rotation and its life-giving light. The Earth's spin also influences weather and ocean currents. The Coriolis effect, caused by the rotation, shapes wind patterns and ocean gyres. Without sunlight to power these systems, the rotation's role becomes less effective, but does not disappear. Some atmospheric movements continue in muted forms, but the dynamic climate patterns driven by solar heating cease. The length of a day remains roughly the same, but the experience of time alters drastically. The passage of hours becomes a measured abstraction rather than a felt reality. Societies create new ways to mark time, mechanical, astronomical, social, to provide meaning and structure in a world without sunlight. In the quiet, rotating Earth, stars appear brighter and more constant than before, unobscured by daylight. Ancient human cultures once used the stars to navigate and tell time. In the New World, celestial bodies regain importance as guides and markers. People look to the sky for cycles and rhythms, building calendars based on lunar phases, planetary movements, and stellar positions. This cosmic connection offers a fragile thread of continuity and hope. While the sun's light is gone, the universe's vast clockwork continues. Rotations, orbits, alignments that humans can observe and understand. These patterns become anchors in the dark, guiding life through uncertainty. Even in the absence of the sun's glow, Earth's spin carries the promise of movement, change, and the potential for a new rhythm to emerge. It reminds us that life is not solely dependent on light, but also on time, motion, and cycles, fundamental forces that persist, even in darkness. In the absence of the sun's guiding light, the Earth's magnetic field becomes an even more critical protector against the dangers of space. The magnetic field, generated by the churning liquid iron in the planet's outer core, extends far into space, creating a vast shield known as the magnetosphere. This invisible barrier deflects charged particles emitted by the sun, solar wind, and cosmic radiation, shielding the atmosphere and surface from harmful radiation. Without the sun, one might imagine that the threat from solar particles diminishes, but the reality is more complex. The solar wind weakens, but does not vanish immediately. Cosmic rays, high-energy particles originating from outside the solar system, continue to bombard the planet. Without sunlight to energize the atmosphere, the magnetic field's protective role becomes vital to preserving whatever atmosphere remains. Over time, the magnetosphere fluctuates, responding to changes deep within the Earth's core and external cosmic forces. This shifting magnetic shield influences navigation systems for both humans and animals. Migratory species such as birds, sea turtles, and whales rely on the Earth's magnetic field for orientation and long-distance travel. With disruptions to the magnetic field's stability, their navigation becomes erratic, contributing to disorientation, failed migrations, and population declines. The magnetic poles themselves may shift or wander, a natural phenomenon known as geomagnetic reversal, which happens irregularly over thousands to millions of years. Without the sun's activity as a stabilizing factor, these shifts could accelerate or become more chaotic, increasing vulnerability to cosmic radiation bursts. For human technology, the magnetosphere remains crucial. It protects satellites in orbit from radiation damage and shields electrical grids on the surface from solar storms that can induce massive power outages. In the sunless world, with limited energy resources and fragile infrastructure, maintaining this shield is essential to prevent further technological collapse. Scientists and engineers study the magnetic field closely, seeking to understand its changing dynamics and find ways to reinforce technological resilience. New materials, shielding techniques, and satellite designs aim to withstand increased cosmic radiation. Ground-based observatories monitor fluctuations in the magnetic field to provide early warning of geomagnetic storms or radiation surges. Culturally and spiritually, the magnetic field takes on new significance. Indigenous and ancient peoples revered the Earth's magnetic forces as sacred and mysterious. In the New World, humans renew their respect and curiosity for this unseen power that guards life. Stories, rituals, and art reflect this invisible but vital force, weaving it into the fabric of meaning for a planet darkened but not defeated. Despite the challenges, the magnetic field symbolizes endurance and protection. It is a reminder that life on Earth depends not only on sunlight, but also on unseen forces beneath the surface and beyond the sky. This guardian field continues its silent vigil, shielding the world as it slowly adjusts to the profound loss of its star. The vanishing of the sun plunges the Earth into darkness, but even as the familiar star disappears, the sky above offers a new kind of spectacle, one that few have ever seen so clearly before. With the absence of sunlight, the night sky becomes a brilliant canvas of stars, planets, and cosmic phenomena. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens in dazzling clarity, unpolluted by the sun's overwhelming glare. Constellations, nebulas, and distant galaxies become more vivid, revealing the universe's vastness in breathtaking detail. Ancient civilizations long relied on the stars for navigation, storytelling, and spiritual guidance. In this sunless world, humanity rediscovers that deep connection to the cosmos. The stars become a source of wonder, comfort, and direction amid the uncertainty and silence below. People gather in observatories and open fields to watch the celestial display, finding solace in the constancy of the night sky. Without the sun's warmth, the planets appear as glowing orbs of light, moving slowly against the backdrop of stars. The dance of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn becomes a nightly ritual, inspiring myths and scientific curiosity alike. The comets and meteors that streak across the sky become signs, omens, and reminders of the universe's constant motion. The absence of sunlight also reveals phenomena normally hidden by daylight. Auroras, ribbons of shimmering light caused by charged particles interacting with the magnetic field, grow more frequent and intense near the poles. These glowing curtains paint the sky with ethereal greens, purples, and reds, captivating those fortunate enough to witness them. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, can be studied with unprecedented precision, connecting humanity to the origins of the cosmos. In this new era, astronomy and cosmology experience a renaissance. Scientists develop advanced telescopes and sensors designed to operate in the deep cold and darkness, probing further into the mysteries of space. The absence of solar interference allows clearer views of distant stars, black holes, and dark matter, expanding knowledge and inspiring exploration. Culturally, the night sky becomes a central motif in art, literature, and philosophy. Poets write of the eternal stars as symbols of hope and endurance. Philosophers contemplate humanity's place in the vast cosmos, finding humility and awe. Visual artists depict the night sky's beauty and mystery, reminding future generations of the universe's grandeur. This cosmic perspective brings a renewed sense of unity and purpose. In a world without sunlight, the stars above connect all people, transcending borders, languages, and conflicts. Shared gazes at the night sky foster community and collective imagination, offering a common anchor in a changed world. Spiritually, many turn to the heavens for meaning and guidance. Star patterns become new sacred symbols, inspiring rituals and meditations. The vastness of space encourages reflections on life's fragility and resilience, and on the possibility of life beyond Earth. Yet the stars, while constant, cannot replace the sun's life-giving energy. They offer light but not warmth, navigation but not nourishment. Still, their presence in the darkness serves as a powerful reminder. Even when one light fades, countless others endure, shining across the infinite night. The night sky thus becomes both a sanctuary and a beacon, a source of knowledge, inspiration, and hope. It invites humanity to look beyond loss and darkness, to embrace the mystery of existence and the endless possibilities that lie beyond the vanished sun. In a world plunged into eternal darkness by the disappearance of the sun, human resilience and ingenuity become the guiding lights for survival. Without the warmth and energy of the sun, humanity is forced to radically rethink how it lives, grows food, generates power, and sustains communities. The challenges are immense, but so too is the determination to endure. Initially, the abrupt loss of sunlight sends societies into chaos. Food supplies dwindle, energy shortages cripple infrastructure, and communication networks falter. Governments scramble to respond, but the scale of the crisis exceeds previous experiences. Panic, migration, and conflict rise as people compete for scarce resources. Yet, amid this turmoil, pockets of cooperation and innovation begin to emerge. Humans turn to technology as a means to replace the sun's role. Greenhouses powered by geothermal or nuclear energy become vital for growing crops indoors. Hydroponics and aeroponics allow farming without soil, using nutrient-rich water solutions to nourish plants. Vertical farms in underground or sealed facilities maximize space and yield. These systems require constant energy input, careful monitoring, and skilled management, but they offer hope for food security. Energy generation shifts toward alternatives that do not depend on solar power. Nuclear plants, geothermal wells, and tidal energy become primary sources. Innovations in battery storage and energy efficiency are crucial to balance supply and demand in a world where sunlight no longer fuels the grid. Communities invest in microgrids and decentralized power systems to increase resilience. Water becomes an even more precious resource. Melting glaciers and precipitation patterns vanish, so humans develop advanced desalination and water recycling technologies. Atmospheric water generators harvest moisture from the air, and closed-loop systems minimize waste. Conservation becomes a way of life, and infrastructure adapts to capture every drop. Housing and infrastructure evolve to withstand the new climate extremes. Insulated shelters, underground cities, and modular habitats protect people from cold and darkness. Urban design incorporates controlled environments, artificial lighting, and air filtration. Transportation adapts with electric vehicles, heated roads, and tunnels designed for icy conditions. Socially, communities reforge bonds through shared struggle and mutual support. Traditional divisions soften in the face of common threats. New governance models emphasize collaboration, resource sharing, and long-term planning. Education shifts towards survival skills, scientific knowledge, and sustainability ethics. Culturally, the loss of the sun inspires new narratives and meanings. Stories of the sun's disappearance, the darkness endured, and the ingenuity required become central myths. Art, music, and literature explore themes of loss, hope, and rebirth. Spirituality evolves to honor resilience and the unseen forces sustaining life. Mental health becomes a critical concern. The absence of sunlight affects mood, sleep, and cognitive function. Societies develop therapies, lighting technologies, and community activities to combat depression and isolation. Human connection and purpose take on heightened importance in maintaining well-being. Despite the immense hardships, humanity adapts and innovates. Over generations, new ways of living and thriving emerge, rooted in respect for nature's fragility and the interdependence of all life. The darkness becomes a crucible for transformation, a test of endurance that reveals the depth of human creativity and spirit. Ultimately, the disappearance of the sun reshapes not only the physical world, but also human identity and values. It challenges humanity to find light within itself, to build a future sustained not by a distant star, but by collective will, compassion, and wisdom. In the endless night, the human heart becomes the true source of light.